Good evening and welcome to Sun Meadow Temple. We're so happy you've joined us. My name is Alba and I use she, her pronouns. This is our Valentine's Day service and I'm so happy you are here. As always, the service is recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. You still have 2 days to vote for the holiday movie and submit your Valentine's Day treats for the contest, and 3 days to submit your availability for the upcoming tax meeting. This observance will be longer as we are planning the tax meeting as our next event. We will open today with the opening words, which will appear on the slide behind you. Feel free to read along at home or listen as I read the words out loud. We welcome you into the light of the gods and light this flame in celebration. May its brightness symbolize our connection to the gods and the natural world. May you join us in this community of faith, cherishing love and with open hearts. So our theme this month is love for obvious reasons. And our readings today are Book 23 of the Odyssey by Homer, translated by Samuel Butler, and an excerpt from Mongan's Frenzy from Irish Fairy Tales by James Stephens, which involves an obsession with beautiful cows. So we will open with Book 23 of the Odyssey. Euryclea now went upstairs, laughing to tell her mistress that her dear husband had come home. Her aged knees became young again, and her feet were nimble for joy as she went up to her mistress and bent over her head to speak to her. "Wake up, Penelope, my dear child," she exclaimed, "and see with your own eyes something that you have been wanting this long time past. Ulysses has at last indeed come home again, and has killed the suitors who were giving you so much trouble in his house, eating up his estate and ill-treating his son." "My good nurse," answered Penelope, "you must be mad. The gods sometimes send very sensible people out of their minds, and make foolish people become sensible. This is what they must have been doing to you, for you always used to be a reasonable person. Why should you thus mock me, when I have trouble enough already, talking such nonsense, and waking me up out of a sweet sleep that had taken possession of my eyes and closed them? I have never slept so soundly from the day my poor husband went to that city with the ill-omened name. Go back again into the woman's room. If it had been anyone else who had woke me up to bring me such absurd news, I should have sent her away with a severe scolding, as it is your age shall protect you." "My dear child," answered Euryclea, "I am not mocking you. It is quite true as I tell you that Ulysses is come home again. He was the stranger whom they all kept on treating so badly in the cloister. Telemachus knew all the time that he was come back, but kept his father's secret, that he might have his revenge on these wicked people." Then Penelope sprang up from her couch, threw her arms round Euryclea, and wept for joy. "But, my dear nurse," said she, "explain this to me. If he has really come home, as you say, how did he manage to overcome the wicked suitors single-handed, seeing what a number of them there always were?" "I was not there," answered Euryclea, "and do not know. I only heard them groaning while they were being killed. We sat crouching and huddled up in a corner of the woman's room with the doors closed, till your son came to fetch me because his father sent him. I then found Ulysses standing over the corpses that were lying on the ground all around him, one on top of the other. You would have enjoyed it if you could have seen him standing there all bespattered with blood and filth, and looking just like a lion. But the corpses are now all piled up in the gatehouse that is in the outer court, and Ulysses has lit a great fire to purify the house with sulphur. He has sent me to call you, so come with me, that you may both be happy together after all. For now at last the desire of your heart has been fulfilled. Your husband is come home to find both wife and son alive and well, and to take his revenge in his own house on the suitors who behaved so badly to him." "My dear nurse," said Penelope, "do not exult too confidently over all this. You know how delighted everyone would be to see Ulysses come home, more particularly myself and the son who has been born to both of us. But what you tell me cannot really be true. It is some god who is angry with the suitors for their great wickedness, and has made an end of them, for they respected no man in the whole world, neither rich nor poor, who came near them, and they have come to a bad end in the consequence of their iniquity. Ulysses is dead, far away from the Achaean land. He will never return home again." Then Nurse Euryclea said, "My child, what are you talking about? But you are all hard of belief and have made up your mind that your husband is never coming home, although he is in the house by his own fireside at this very moment. Besides, I can give you another proof. When I was washing him, I perceived the scar which the wild boar gave him, and wanted to tell you about it, but in his wisdom he would not let me, and clapped his hands over my mouth, So come with me, and I will make this bargain with you. If I am deceiving you, you may have me killed in the most cruel death you can think of." "My dear nurse," said Penelope, "however wise you may be, you can hardly fathom the counsels of the gods. Nevertheless, we will go in search of my son, that I may see the corpses of the suitors and the man who has killed them." On this she came down from her upper room, and while doing so she considered whether she should keep at a distance from her husband and question him, or whether she should at once go up to him and embrace him. When, however, she had crossed the stone floor of the cloister, she sat down opposite to Ulysses by the fire against the wall at right angles, while Ulysses sat near one of the bearing posts, looking upon the ground, and waiting to see what his brave wife would say to him when she saw him. For a long time she sat silent and as one lost in amazement. At one moment she looked him full in the face, but then again directly she was misled by his shabby clothes and failed to recognize him, till Telemachus began to reproach her and said, "Mother, but you are so hard that I cannot call you by such a name. Why do you keep away from my father in this way? Why do you not sit by his side and begin talking to him and asking him questions? No other woman can bear to keep away from her husband when he had come back to her after 20 years of absence and after having gone through so much, but your heart was always as hard as a stone." Penelope answered, "My son, I am so lost in astonishment that I can find no words in which either to ask questions or to answer them. I cannot even look him straight in the face. Still, if he really is Ulysses, come back to his home again. We shall get to understand one another better by and by, for there are tokens with which we two are alone acquainted, and which are hidden from all others." Ulysses smiled at this, and said to Telemachus, "Let your mother put me to any proof she likes. She will make up her mind about it presently. She rejects me for the moment and believes me to be somebody else, because I am covered with dirt and have such bad clothes on. Let us, however, consider what we had better do next. When one man has killed another, even though he was not one who would leave many friends to take up his quarrel, the man who has killed him must still say good-bye to his friends and fly the country, whereas we have been killing the stay of a whole town, and all the picked youth of Ithaca. I would have you consider this matter." "Look to it yourself, father," answered Telemachus, "for they say you are the wisest counselor in the world, and that there is no other mortal man who can compare with you. We will follow you with right good will, nor shall you find us fail you in so far as our strength holds out." "I will say what I think will be best," answered Ulysses. "First wash and put your shirts on. Tell the maids also to go to their own room and dress. Phemius shall then strike up a dance tune on his lyre, so that if people outside hear, or any of the neighbors, or someone going along the street happens to notice it, they may think that there is a wedding in the house, and no rumors about the death of the suitors will get about in the town, before we can escape to the woods upon my own land. Once there, we will settle which of the courses heaven vouchsafes us shall seem the wisest." Thus he did speak, and they did even as he had said. First they washed and put their shirts on, while the women got ready. Then Phemius took out his lyre, and set them all longing for sweet song and stately dance. The house re-echoed with the sound of men and women dancing, and the people outside said, "I suppose the queen has been getting married at last. She ought to be ashamed of herself for not continuing to protect her husband's property until he comes home." This was what they said, but they did not know what it was that had been happening. The upper servant Eurynomé washed and anointed Ulysses in his own house, and gave him a shirt and cloak, while Minerva made him look taller and stronger than before. She also made the hair grow thick on top of his head, and flow down in curls like hyacinth blossoms. She glorified him about the head and shoulders, just as a skillful workman who has studied art of all kinds under Vulcan and Minerva, and his work is full of beauty, enriches a piece of silver plate by gilding it. He came from the bath looking like one of the immortals, and sat down opposite his wife on the seat he had left. "My dear," said he, "heaven has endowed you with a heart more unyielding than woman ever yet had. No other woman could bear to keep away from her husband when he had come back to her after 20 years of absence, and after having gone through so much. But come, nurse, get a bed ready for me. I will sleep alone, for this woman has a heart as hard as iron." "My dear," answered Penelope, "I have no wish to set myself up, nor depreciate you, but I am not struck by your appearance, for I very well remember what kind of man you were when you set sail from Ithaca. Nevertheless, Euryclea, take his bed outside the bedchamber that he himself built. Bring the bed outside this room, and put bedding upon it with fleeces, good coverlets, and blankets." She said this to try him, but Ulysses was very angry, and said, "Wife, I am much displeased at what you have been saying. Who has been taking my bed from the place in which I left it? He must have found it a hard task, no matter how skilled a workman he was, unless some god came and helped him to shift it. There is no man living, however strong and in his prime, who could move it from its place, for it is a marvelous curiosity, which I made with my very own hands." There was a young olive growing within the precincts of the house, in full vigor, and about as thick as this bearing post. I built my room around this with strong walls of stone and a roof to cover them, and I made the doors strong and well-fitting. Then I cut the top boughs of the olive tree and left the stump standing. This I dressed roughly from the root upwards, and then workmen with carpenter's tools well and skillfully straightened my work by drawing a line on the wood and making it into a bed prop. I then bored a hole down the middle and made it into the center post of my bed, at which I worked till I had finished, inlaying it with gold and silver. After this I stretched a hide of crimson leather from one side of it to the other. So you see, I know all about it, and I desire to learn whether it is still there, or whether any one has been removing it by cutting down the olive tree at its roots." When she heard the sure proofs Ulysses now gave her, she fairly broke down. She flew weeping to his side, flung her arms about his neck, and kissed him. "Do not be angry with me, Ulysses," she cried. "You, who are the wisest of mankind, we have suffered, both of us. Heaven has denied us the happiness of spending our youth and of growing old together. Do not then be aggrieved or take it amiss that I did not embrace you thus as soon as I saw you. I have been shuddering all the time through fear that someone might come here and deceive me with a lying story, for there are very many wicked people going about. Jove's daughter Helen would never have yielded herself to a man from a foreign country if she had known that the sons of the Achaeans would come after her and bring her back. Heaven put it in her heart to do wrong, and she gave no thought to that sin which has been the source of all our sorrows. Now, however, that you have convinced me by showing you that you know all about our bed, which no human being has ever seen but you and I and a single maidservant, the daughter of Actor, who was given to me by my father on our marriage, and who keeps the doors of our room, hard of belief though I have been, I can mistrust no longer." Then Ulysses in his turn melted, and wept as he clasped his dear and faithful wife to his bosom. As the sight of land is welcome to men who are swimming towards the shore, when Neptune has wrecked their ship with the fury of his winds and waves, a few alone reach the land, and these, covered with brine, are thankful when they find themselves on firm ground and out of danger. Even so was her husband welcome to her as she looked upon him, and she could not tear her two fair arms from around his neck. Indeed, they would have gone on indulging their sorrow till rosy-fingered morn appeared, had not Minerva determined otherwise, and held night back into the far west, while she would not suffer dawn to leave Oceanus, nor to yoke the two steeds Lampus and Phaethon, that bear her onward to break the day upon mankind. We will then move on to Mongan's Frenzy from Irish Fairy Tales. Okay, so this one's in a different, it's more in plain English and less translated, but it can still be a little confusing. So just to be clear, the king of, how I'm pronouncing it as Leinster, was Brandov, and Mongan is the other character, and Duvlaka is the woman. So, the king of Leinster at that time was Brandov, son of Icach. He welcomed Mongan and treated him well, and that night Mongan slept in his palace. When he awoke in the morning, he looked out of a lofty window, and he saw on the sunny lawn before the palace a herd of cows. There were 50 cows in all, for he counted them, and each cow had a calf beside her, and each cow and calf was pure white in color, and each of them had red ears. When Mongan saw these cows, he fell in love with them, as he had never fallen in love with anything before. He came down from the window and walked on the sunny lawn among the cows, looking at each of them and speaking words of affection and endearment to them all. And while he was thus walking and talking and looking and loving, he noticed that someone was moving beside him. He looked from the cows then and saw that the King of Leinster was at his side. "Are you in love with the cows?" Brenda asked him. "I am," said Mongan. "Everybody is," said the King of Leinster. "I never saw anything like them," said Mongan. "Nobody has," says the King of Leinster. "I never saw anything I would rather have than these cows," said Mongan. "These," said the King of Leinster, "are the most beautiful cows in Ireland. And," he continued thoughtfully, "Dubhlaca is the most beautiful woman in Ireland." "There is no lie in what you say," said Mongan. "Is it not a queer thing," said the King of Leinster, "that I should have what you want with all your soul, and you should have what I want with all my heart?" "Queer indeed," said Mongan, "but what is it that you do want?" "Dubhlaca, of course," said the King of Leinster. "You mean," said Mongan, "that you would exchange this herd of 50 pure white cows having red ears, and their 50 calves," said the King of Leinster, "for Dubhlaca or for any woman in the world?" "I would," cried the King of Leinster, and he thumped his knee as he said it. "Done!" roared Mongan, and the two kings shook hands on the bargain. Mongan then called some of his own people, and before any more words could be said, and before any alteration could be made, he set his men behind the cows and marched them home to Ulster. Dubhlaca wanted to know where the cows came from, and Mongan told her that the King of Leinster had given them to him. She fell in love with them as Mongan had done, but there was nobody in the world that could have avoided loving those cows. Such cows they were, such wonders. Mongan and Dubhlaca used to play chess together, and then they would go out together to look at the cows, and then they would go in together and would talk to each other about the cows. Everything they did together, for they loved to be with each other. However, a change came. One morning, a great noise of voices and trampling of horses and rattle of armor came about the palace. Mongan looked from the window. "Who is coming?" asked Dubhlaca, but he did not answer her. "The noise must announce the visit of the king," Dubhlaca continued, but Mongan did not say a word. Dubhlaca then went to the window. "Who is that king?" she asked, and her husband replied to her then. "That is the King of Leinster," he said mournfully. "Well," said Dubhlaca, surprised, "is he not welcome?" "He is welcome indeed," said Mongan lamentably. "Let us go out and welcome him properly," Dubhlaca suggested. "Let us not go near him at all," said Mongan, "for he is coming to complete his bargain." "What bargain are you talking about?" Dubhlaca asked, but Mongan would not answer then. "Let us go out," he said, "for we must go out." Mongan and Dubhlaca went out then and welcomed the King of Leinster. They brought him and his chief men into the palace, and water was brought for their baths, and rooms were appointed for them, and everything was done that should be done for guests. That night there was a feast, and after the feast there was a banquet, and all throughout the feast and the banquet the King of Leinster stared at Dubhlaca with joy, and sometimes his breast was delivered of great sighs, and at times he moved as though in perturbation of spirit and mental agony. "There is something wrong with the King of Leinster," Dubhlaca whispered. "I don't care if there is," said Mongan. "You must ask what he wants." "But I don't want to know it," said Mongan. "Nevertheless, you must ask him," she insisted. So Mongan did ask him, and it was in a melancholy voice that he asked. "Do you want anything?" he said to the King of Leinster. "I do indeed," said Brandon. "If it is in Ulster, I will get it for you," said Mongan mournfully. "It is in Ulster," said Brandon. Mongan did not want to say anything more then, but the King of Leinster was so intent, and everyone else was listening, and Dubhlaca was nudging his arm, so he said, "What is it that you want?" "I want Dubhlaca." "I want her too," said Mongan. "You made your bargain," said the King of Leinster. "My cows and their calves for your Dubhlaca, and the man that makes a bargain keeps a bargain." "I never before heard," said Mongan, "of a man giving away his own wife." "Even if you never heard of it before, you must do so now, Dubhlaca," said Dubhlaca, "for honor is longer than life." Mongan became very angry when Dubhlaca had said that. His face went red as a sunset, and the veins swelled in his neck and his forehead. "Do you say that?" he cried to Dubhlaca. "I do." "Let the king of Leinster take her," said Bongan. Duvlaka and the king of Leinster went apart then to speak together, and the eye of the king seemed to be as big as a plate, so fevered was it and so enlarged and inflamed by the look of Duvlaka. He was so confounded with joy that his words got mixed up with his teeth, and Duvlaka did not know exactly what it is he was trying to say, and he did not know himself. But at last he did say something intelligible, and this is what he said. "I am a very happy man," said he. "And I," said Duvlaka, "am the happiest woman in the world." "Why should you be happy?" the astonished king demanded. "Listen to me," she answered. "If you tried to take me away from this place against my own wish, one half of the men of Ulster would be dead before you got to me, and the other half would be badly wounded in my defence." "A bargain is a bargain," the king of Leinster began. "But," she continued, "they will not prevent my going away, for they all know that I have been in love with you for ages." What have you been in love with me for ages?" said the amazed king. "In love with you," replied Duvlaka. "This is news," said the king, "and it is good news." "But by my word," said Duvlaka, "I will not go with you unless you grant me a boon." "All that I have," cried Branda, "and all that everybody has." "And you must pass your word and pledge your word that you will do what I ask." "I pass it and pledge it," cried the joyful king. "Then," said Duvlaka, "this is what I bind on you." "Light the yoke," he cried. "Until 1 year is up and out, you are not to pass the night in any house that I am in." "By my head and by my hand," Barnab stammered, "and if you come into a house where I am during the time and term of this year, you are not to sit down in the chair that I am sitting in." "Heaven is my doom," he groaned. "But," said Duvlaka, "if I am sitting in a chair or seat, you are to sit in a chair or seat that is over against me and opposite to me and at a distance from me." "Alas," said the king, and he smote his hands together, and then he beat them on his head, and then he looked at them and at everything about, and he could not tell what anything was or where anything was, for his mind was clouded and his wits had gone astray. "Why do you bind these woes on me?" he pleaded. "I wish to find out if you truly love me." "But I do," said the king. "I love you madly and dearly, and with all my faculties and members." "That is the way I love you," said Duvlaka. "We shall have a notable year of courtship and joy. Let us go now," she continued, "for I am impatient to be with you." "Alas," said Brandon as he followed her. "Alas, alas," said the king of Leinster. So as the stories were a bit long, we will avoid much of the normal commentary, but I really hope that all of you have a wonderful Valentine's Day and luck in love. So we will now move into the ritual part of the observance, and I will play the video, and everyone should be able to enjoy it. We leave this offering for our gods to symbolize our connection and devotion. We gift this rock to symbolize the stability of the gods in our world. We gift this water to accept the flow of our lives. We welcome life and bless our offerings with oil to share our riches. We embrace our connection to each other and the world and celebrate our revival. We will now do our closing words, but before that, I just want to remind everyone of our very important upcoming tax meeting, which is going to be on the 24th, when we would have our next observance. I really hope that as many people who want to can attend. I'll keep you up to date on all of the things we plan this year, money-wise and finances, in general, and our taxes for last year, as well as anything else that needs to be talked about. So now I will read our closing words, which you can read aloud with us, or just listen as I read them aloud. As we move out into the world, let us remember our community of faith. Cherish love and open your heart as you walk through life. Hold dear the light of the gods and our connection with the natural world. Go forth in celebration and carry the light of connection within your heart. We'll now move on to coffee hour, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the month.